What if the most powerful empire on Earth didn't need to fire a single shot? No tanks rolling across borders, no mushroom clouds in the sky, just a quiet, relentless takeover that you barely notice until it's too late. That's China's playbook. While America has been caught up in wars, elections, and culture wars, Beijing has been executing a decades-long plan to make the world dependent on them. And the craziest part? It's working. When we think of empires, we imagine the Romans marching across Europe or the British Navy ruling the seas. But China's approach is different. Their leaders studied history, and they realized something. The strongest empires often collapsed because they overextended militarily. So instead, Beijing is building an empire of influence. They don't want to conquer your city with soldiers. They want you to wake up one day realizing you can't live without what they provide. Right now, that's already happening. From the roads in Africa to the apps on your phone, from the medicine in your cabinet to the chips in your laptop, China's fingerprints are everywhere. In the 1990s, few would have imagined a world where "Made in China" meant far more than toys and cheap gadgets. But fast forward to today, and that label represents the backbone of global supply chains. They've crafted a strategy so subtle that by the time the rest of the world fully catches on, it might already be too late. At the heart of China's expansion is the Belt and Road Initiative. On paper, it sounds almost noble. We'll help countries build highways, ports, and railways to connect the world. In practice, it's something else entirely, a financial spiderweb. By loaning billions to poorer nations, China ensures that when the bills come due, those countries can't walk away. And when they default, Beijing doesn't just forgive the debt, they collect in other ways. Take Sri Lanka. In 2017, unable to pay back massive Chinese loans, they handed over control of their Hambantota port for 99 years. Imagine if the US gave away New Orleans or Los Angeles Harbor for a century because of unpaid bills. That's not just foreign aid, that's leverage, bordering on colonization. And Sri Lanka isn't alone. Across Africa, Central Asia, and even parts of Europe, Chinese-funded projects lock governments into a cycle of dependency. And here's the genius, or the danger, depending on how you see it. Unlike traditional empires, China doesn't have to send an army to occupy these nations. They simply make themselves indispensable. Ports double as naval bases. Railroads funnel resources straight back to Beijing. Even digital infrastructure like fiber optic cables is often built and maintained by Chinese firms. What looks like a gift often becomes a chain. And it's happening on a scale no empire in history ever managed this quietly. But you don't have to fly to Sri Lanka to see China's power. Just reach into your pocket. Your phone, your laptop, even your electric car. Most of them depend on rare earth metals like neodymium or dysprosium. Guess who dominates 80% of the global supply? China. That's not just a market advantage. That's a chokehold on the future of green energy, military technology, and consumer electronics. Think about it. If China cut off rare earth exports tomorrow, entire industries in the US and Europe would grind to a halt. This isn't hypothetical. It's already been threatened. In 2010, during a dispute with Japan, China quietly restricted shipments of rare earths. Markets panicked, and Japan had no choice but to back down. It was a preview of what Beijing can do at any moment. And it's not just the raw materials. Chinese companies build huge chunks of the world's electronic supply chain. From iPhone components to cheap Android knockoffs, factories in Shenzhen and Guangzhou pump out the gadgets we rely on daily. Even global pharmaceutical supply chains lean heavily on Chinese factories, producing ingredients for antibiotics and basic medicine. Every time you swipe your screen, take your pills, or charge your earbuds, you're participating, whether you know it or not, in China's global strategy. By the way, if you've been enjoying this deep dive and want to see more stories like this, you can support the channel by hitting that like button and subscribing. It's free, but it helps us bring you more untold histories and hidden strategies. Now let's move from the physical to the digital. Apps like TikTok might seem harmless, just dance challenges and memes, but behind the fun is an ecosystem of data collection and cultural influence. Millions of Americans spend hours daily on an app built by a Chinese company, feeding not just ad revenue but valuable behavioral data into Beijing's hands. That data is gold. Patterns of what you watch, what you laugh at, what grabs your attention. It's the kind of insight marketing firms dream of and intelligence agencies worry about. Then there's Huawei and the global race for 5G. For years, China pushed aggressively to dominate the next generation of internet infrastructure. Whoever builds the networks of tomorrow doesn't just make money. They control how information moves, who gets access, and potentially who gets cut off. Western governments panicked, banning Huawei equipment and warning allies. But by then, Chinese tech had already spread into Africa, the Middle East, and Latin America. And beyond the tech itself is the narrative war. Confucius Institutes fund language and culture programs across U.S. campuses. Hollywood studios edit films to appease Chinese censors, desperate for access to the billion-dollar Chinese box office. Entire scripts get rewritten, so villains aren't Chinese, or politically sensitive themes simply disappear. Slowly, subtly, the boundaries of free speech shift, not because of laws, but because of market power. It's empire by algorithm and economics, not armies. And it's far harder to resist because it happens invisibly, hidden behind everyday conveniences. So, where does this all lead? If the 20th century was the American century, Beijing is betting the 21st will belong to China. But unlike the US, which projected power through military bases and cultural exports, China's strategy is quieter. They don't need to plant a flag in every country. They just need those countries so entangled in their web of loans, trade, and tech that resistance feels impossible. Already, you can see hints of this future. Nations hesitate to criticize China's human rights abuses, fearing economic retaliation. Supply chains bend toward Asia. Global institutions like the United Nations feel Beijing's growing influence. Even the dollar's dominance faces a challenger as China pushes for alternatives in global trade. And here's the chilling thought. You might never see a dramatic day one moment. No headline saying China takes over the world. Instead, you'll wake up one morning and realize it's already happened. Your medicine, your energy, your entertainment, even your freedom of speech, shaped quietly by a system you never voted for. But here's the twist. This story isn't over. In fact, what comes next could be even more dramatic. Because while China plays the long game, resistance is growing too. Nations are banding together, industries are scrambling to reduce dependency, and new technologies may change the balance again. The real question is, will it be enough? And history offers a warning. Rome thought it would last forever. The British Empire believed the sun would never set on its power, yet both fell. In our next episode, we'll explore how history's greatest empires, from Rome to Britain, collapsed under the weight of their own success, and whether China is unknowingly setting the stage for the same fate. Because as powerful as they seem today, no empire is truly invincible. And that's where the real drama lies. So make sure you're subscribed. You won't want to miss what happens next.